The Federal and Devaki Specialty Hospital jointly present the Madurai Marathon 2024 Run for Health on Sunday, October 20th, 2024. Entry is free for all.
Welcome to WWII, the Federal's weekly program that tries to make sense of international developments. In this episode, we look at Israel's unique relationship with the world superpower, the United States, and the role it has played in the Jewish state's rise militarily, with the ability to challenge international laws and act in a manner that almost none else can. October 7, 2023, that is last year, shocked Israel. Its much hyped security was breached by Hamas fighters effortlessly. Around 1,200 Israelis, including 800 civilians, were killed, many injured, and some 250 were taken hostage. Israel's retaliation was expected to be ruthless and has since shown itself to be so. But how much of the retaliation should suffice? If in the initial days of the Hamas attack, the world watched stupefied by the turn of developments, gradually Israel's intense assault on Gaza has taken on a sinister hue. An estimated 40,000 Palestinians have reportedly been killed so far in the Israeli assault. The International Court of Justice was even petitioned to describe the unprecedented attack on Gaza as genocide, meaning that a race or people of a particular ethnicity was being obliterated. Even countries that otherwise support Israel have called for a ceasefire, but there has been no ceasefire. On the contrary, the canvas of the conflict has widened, drawing Lebanon into it along with the Houthis in Yemen and their mentor, Iran. The world is sitting on the edge of a major conflagration that leaves little to the imagination if it were to actually happen. So, how is it that Israel has proved unstoppable? There are several reasons, but the one that stands out is the failure of the United Nations. The United Nations, through its Security Council, is meant to oversee the peace and security of all people in the world. But the United States, one of the five veto-wielding powers and a firm supporter of the State of Israel, has blocked the Security Council from acting against Israel's belligerence. The US and Israel relationship is not comparable with any other. It's not just a normal or even a friendly diplomatic relationship between two independent nation states. This one, at the heart of it, is organic in nature. You cannot exactly know where US interests end and Israeli interests begin, or vice versa. It is an evolution that, in large part, can be traced back to the years leading up to the Second World War. The numbers rose sharply when German dictator Adolf Hitler and his stormtroopers victimized Jews in his country. The Holocaust followed. Many Jews fled Germany and other European nations under Hitler's control. Thousands arrived in the US. Between 1945 to 48, the then President Harry S. Truman, through an enabling law, oversaw the arrival of around 40,000 Jews into the US. At the end of the Second World War, the British transferred power and responsibilities around the world to the US, including the Palestine region. In other words, the US took over where the British left off. Over time, the Jews have become an intrinsic part of the American establishment. Jews play a key role in its politics, academia, media, and entertainment industries. Organizations like the AIPAC, are a bedrock of pro-Israel Jews in the US. The AIPAC, or the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, proudly proclaims it has 3 million pro-Israel American members. According to Open Secrets, an independent non-profit organization, in the period 1990 to 2006, pro-Israeli interests in the US contributed $56.8 million in individual, group, and soft money donations to federal candidates and party committees. In contrast, Arab Americans and Muslim public affairs committees contributed During the same period, only around $800,000. More recently, according to reports, IPAC is planning to spend $100 million in campaign funding, particularly to Democrats who are critical of Israel's action in Gaza. The attempt is to neutralize by co opting those who are not falling in line. In recent years, there has been a pushback, however, from Jewish groups within the US, like J Street, which have taken an anti Netanyahu line. But donations to this organization, not surprisingly, is just around $4 million. So, of the estimated 800 billionaires in the US, half of them are said to be Jewish and support Israel. During his presidency, Donald Trump made a surprising announcement recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, a long held demand of the Israeli government. Reports quoting Forward, an independent Jewish newspaper, say Trump obliged Israeli born US billionaire Sheldon Adelson, who conditionally contributed $90 million to his re election bid and another $120 million for the Republican campaign. No US candidate contesting in the presidential elections can afford to antagonize the pro Israeli Jewish lobby. While Trump is a favorite, Kamala Harris too has been vocal in her support for Israel and the Netanyahu government. Her attempt at being guarded in her support is seen as a negative and makes her a suspect in the eyes of the pro-Israeli lobby. Harris said she fully supported security for Israel. At the same time, she wanted a ceasefire to be worked out to end the year-long Israeli assault on Gaza. This has been enough for her detractors to question her commitment to Israel. In fact, any attempt within the US to either question or criticize Israel is met with a drastic response from the government. For all its proclamations in favor of democracy and free speech, the peaceful university camp protests across the US earlier this year against the Israeli attack on Gaza was dealt with violently in a manner almost reminiscent of any authoritarian government. More than 3,000 students were arrested for the protests. Reports quoting the New York Civil Liberties Union said university authorities took a harsher approach to controlling pro Palestinian protests compared with the anti war protests in previous decades. In new admissions to universities, restrictions have been imposed on students in Columbia University, the university which used to be open to the public. Strict entry procedures have reportedly been set up to allow only students and faculty to enter the campus. Universities are funded to some extent by pro Israeli endowments, leading to demands from students to delink from such funders. It was widely reported during the protests that the harsh response from the Columbia University administration was in part due to pressure from Jewish pro Israeli donors. Though the US is a haven for Israel and pro Israel Jews, there has been backlash in recent years against the actions of Israel in the occupied Palestinian territories. The non violent BDS, or the Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions movement, targets Israeli products and companies collaborating with Israeli firms, among other things, with a view to pressuring Israel to conform to international laws and stop the questionable treatment of Palestinians in the occupied territories. The BDS has expectedly come under severe criticism from the pro Jewish Israeli lobby. The US Congress is considering a law that criminalizes any company or entity that boycotts Israel or products made in that country. So, not just that, it is now mandatory for companies to give undertakings before any contract is signed that they will not be part of the boycott Israel movement. According to civil rights groups, over 30 states in the United States have passed various versions of anti BDS laws. This means that anyone joining government employment and signing contracts with the government have to sign an undertaking that they don't support the anti Israeli BDS movement. Many of these laws are under challenge in courts, but the point to note is the widespread backing to Israel from the US establishment. A recent development is the housing of US nationals in Jewish settlements in the occupied Palestinian territories. The settlements are illegal under international law, but they have proliferated in recent years across the West Bank in particular. The settling of Jewish American citizens in these illegal settlements further complicates any possibility of a peaceful resolution and creation of an independent Palestine, which was extremely slim to begin with anyway. In this overall context, when we see the US government representative vetoing any resolution in the UN Security Council that is perceived as anti Israel, it is backed and compelled by a huge domestic constituency, and no politician or political party within the US is in a position to challenge this. The US is therefore heavily tied down on all counts in favor of whatever Israel does. No wonder the Benjamin Netanyahu government can brazen it out in Gaza with no countervailing power like the UN Security Council to challenge what it is doing.
The Federal and Devaki Specialty Hospital jointly present the Madurai Marathon 2024 Run for Health on Sunday, October 20th, 2024. Entry is free for all.